Hey guys, all the way with Alloway here with Travis Mathews, who is the writer and director of the film Interior Leather Bar. You guys have had quite of success on the festival circuit.
Thank you.
And you're finally at Outfest.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, so the film focuses on 40 minutes of rumored lost footage from the film Cruisin'. So where did you decide to kind of like recreate this 40 minutes of S&M sex footage?
Well, to step back just a little bit, you know, when we decided to come together to do a film that both was playing with sex as a storytelling tool, and we also knew that we were going to be referencing cruising in some way. We didn't know, you know, like we both knew the history of cruising, we both knew its representation, we both had seen it so many times, but neither of us knew about these, the mythology behind these lost 40 minutes. And when we discovered that, it became like an obvious sort of launching point for us with our film. And there was never a moment where we thought we were actually going to make 40 minutes that were of like this lost footage.
Right.
It was much more interesting for us to use that, like I said, as a launching pad to do other things. And because Cruising is such an old film that a lot of people, even if they saw it when it came out or they saw it on Netflix or whatever, we couldn't assume that people were going to remember certain scenes, like, oh, that must have been cut out of that scene in the third act, So instead, you know, we committed to recreating a leather bar scene, because I think that that's actually where most of the cut footage lived.
Right.
And so we committed to recreating that, and then beyond that, the sex that we did show, or the explicitness that we did show, was all kind of lined up in service for the arc of Val's character.
Right.
And Val is the character who's playing some version of the Pacino character from Cruising.
Right.
And so everything, as much as it's a docu-fiction and it sort of goes in and out of that, from the whole time, whether it's footage that is more of the 40 minutes or footage that is of the more behind the scenes, we had a treatment and an arc that was all about Val's story.
Well, and you've said that what makes this film queer is not necessarily the gay sex, but it's the changing boundaries and context that lie within these characters and within the lives that they live. So is that kind of where you and James Franco, your co-director, kind of started with that groundwork, and then from there you decided to build it up?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the ingredients of this film are so unique, and you know, James and I are coming from two completely different places, but then we worked together so seamlessly. The mix of ingredients were just kind of inherently queer, and then what we were wanting to accomplish was also inherently queer. We definitely knew a lot of the things that were just in the DNA of what we were creating, and that they were going to come up in ways that were organic.
Right.
But it happened so quickly. You know, this was originally something that was commissioned for Fashion Week in New York by Costume National. And it was something that I don't actually get to talk about too often. And it was originally supposed to be, you know, an art video that was just going to play in the dressing room at Costume National during Fashion Week.
Interesting.
And then as I came up...
Art videos are really popular right now. So, like, designers hiring filmmakers to make them.
Yeah. And it was a thing where, from the beginning, I had bigger dreams of what we could do with this film. And I had written the treatment, and I knew that if we really nailed down all of the scenes and the arc that were Val's scenes, and then allowed us to keep filming and being available for spontaneous things to happen, that we might have enough to fill out a feature, and we might do something good enough to get into Berlin and Sundance. And so, you know, it's important for me to remember that this came from something that was almost a throwaway project. And I think because of that, it allowed James and I to approach it more fearlessly, you know, and to be not compromising.
Well, I think it shows that there was something inherently in the story that you were exploring that wanted to break free of just a fashion video.
Yeah.
And much of your work explores sex and not only gay sex, but sexual psychology. You have a master's in
counseling
psychology. So why sex? Like for you, what about it do you think needs to be explored?
Well, I mean, I would say that the through line in my work is around gay male intimacy and sexuality, and things that I've done that are both explicit and not explicit are around like this intimate sort of nugget that you can come at from lots of different angles. I think men in general, both straight and gay, have had very few kind of honest conversations and outlets in movies where we get to look at them being both strong and vulnerable in the same mix. And I think both within the gay community and then outside the gay community in terms of filmmakers, we haven't had a lot of representations in the past. I think this is changing rapidly, but we haven't had a lot of representations in the past where both the masculine side and the feminine side are both honored and mixed together in ways that are vulnerable. You know, I really like to see people be vulnerable, not in a way that is manipulative or is like shattering to them, but because I feel like it's raw and it's often honest. And I also think those depictions are so helpful and important for other people to see.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the reason I got into filmmaking and a lot of the reason this is the subject matter that interests me is as a young gay guy growing up in Ohio, in the middle of nowhere, without cable, just coming of age just before the internet. Like, I had no real representations. And
what's so fascinating is that has changed so rapidly with like culture's fascination with S&M sex in general, like not even the gay culture, but you know, with this 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon. So where do you think that's stemming from in culture today?
The internet. I mean, I feel like as a kid you have quick access. I mean, like porn has always been something that is accessible in one way or another, right? But up until the internet, you really had to work on some level to find it. And there was a journey involved. There was probably some sort of shaming, hiding, exploring, adventure. Things that are good and bad, right? Like you had to go to like the dirty bookstore that didn't have a name or something like that. But now, like, you know, within like 20 seconds, I could get like whatever kind of porn fetish that you wanted, like up on my phone, and we could look at it. And you have to think.
And then you could tweet it, and then people could like it.
And so kids are growing up now with sex so available in a way that's never been available before. What's happening kind of parallel is this thing that I'm talking about where different types of relationship parameters and boundaries are being challenged because people are having visibility and access to seeing different ways people are making it work.
How have you dealt with people approaching you saying, you know, this is how I feel about your film, whether negative or positive? Like, what's kind of been your feedback?
Well, I knew from the beginning that it was going to be polarizing. The thing that I'm really happy about is how engaged people are. And, you know, I've been in a lot of film festivals with the different films, and I've never had so many people stick around for the Q&As as they do for this film.
Fantastic.
And it's great. As a filmmaker, like whether someone loves it or hates it, the fact that they want to stick around and they want to both talk about it and they want to hear from the people who made it is great. It's a great feeling, both within the gay filmmaking community and then outside, just sort of with society at large. There's a lot of interest and support to do those things now that really weren't there in the past. And I think also just as a community of filmmakers, we're becoming better storytellers. You know, I think that we're wanting to tell other stories that aren't just about the sort of, you know, tropes that you can count on one hand of like the AIDS story, the coming out story, whatever those were, you know, the gay marriage story. All of those are stories that are totally still valid and are going to be told again and again and again. But I think we're at a point where we're all, or a lot of us, are interested in telling just human stories.
Well, thank you so much, Travis.
My pleasure.
Interior Leather Bar, Outfest 2013.